need help today. As a founder of Generating Winners, I am so looking forward to this call, Bridget, because you are our expert, our resident psychotherapist, amazing author, and just guru of how do you talk to kids and relationships with children. So I'm so happy to have you here today. So just introduce yourself to everybody, what you're doing.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Bridget Cooper, thank you, and I am an author, speaker, consultant, and coach. I do a variety of things around the country with teen audiences as well as adult audiences, trying to help people basically be better leaders by being better people first. So I try to get at the heart of the matter of problems and define them and address them in ways that are usually not seen. My first book was on conflict and communication. And I wrote a teen edition, which I'll share the story about how that came to be later. And then my second/third book is a book on mastering change. So I'm trying to change the world 1 or 10,000 lives at a time, depending on the audience. And so I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And you and I both have teen daughters. So yay, us, right? We're both experiencing, as my mother said, may you have twins just like you. Yep. Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Yeah, I don't have twins, but they're 2.5 years apart, so they might as well be. So yeah, and I am speaking from experience and shared pain, so we can kind of navigate this road together.
You know, when we started Generating Winners, my daughter said, "So, Mom, Generating Winners, this website, does this mean that you're going to be a better parent when I'm in high school?" And I'm like, God help us, I hope so.
You're like, no, it's going to mean you're going to be a better kid. All right.
That's there it is. I like what you think. So I think one of the topics that comes up all the time, and we always worry about the relationships our kids have, whether it's with boys, boyfriends, other kids, are they good, are they positive, with their teachers, are they being bullied, a million different ways you can look at a relationship. But gosh, they don't talk about it, Bridget.
Oh yeah.
So how do you get this conversation going?
Get the kids started. So if you're like most parents, your kid gets off the bus or walks home from school and you say, "How was your day?" And you get something to the effect of, "Fine, good, it's all right, yeah," and they walk off and they're on their social media, or they've got their headphones in, or they go off and they start doing their homework, or they're running between activities. And I think a lot of that comes from our own modeling of behavior. So if you ever have picked up the phone to a friend and somebody says, "How are you?" I remember a friend of mine used to say, it sounded like one word, "Good, and you?" That didn't tell me anything as to how he actually was, but that was his autonomic response. And I think we have modeled as parents that same kind of, "Fine, good, it was great, yeah," and then we move on. But what we want is we want a deeper answer. We want to get the details. We want to get the information, especially as women. The more information, the more we talk about the leaves on the trees and the veins on the leaves. We get, that's what we want to know. And we know our counterpart, our male associates are like, "It's a tree." So I think as women, as mothers, especially, and those interested dads who like to get deeper into the conversation, we want to have them say more, be more authentic and more communicative with us. And I don't know that we've always modeled the way how. So I think part of it starts with us. It starts with us when someone asks us in the presence of our children, "How are we?" We actually have to answer the question more fully. "It's been great. It's been a rock solid week. I did a lot of stuff. Gosh, like I just told you the story this morning about my, my oven debacle and my, picking up on my driveway that's currently happening." So actually now you have a better sense of, Bridget's a little frenetic today. She's going to be a little crazy, right? And you can have that insight. But I think if we don't model first that behavior, it's hard to get that from our kids, because then it feels like it's an uneven setting. Like we're asking for something, we're inquiring, we're digging, when we don't answer anything similarly.
Oh, interesting. So what about that parent that maybe, my vice is my phone. I think you said it. The phone that I have to look, it's like, okay, what's on it now? Right. And my husband and my daughter joke about it, but there's truth in every joke, and there's, right. I realize, okay, it's time to start putting it down, but okay, let me fess up. Maybe I've said good, Yeah, I'm great. Good. How are you?
Good, you?
So how do you, if I change it now, do you think will they pay attention?
Yeah, you can, I always say, whenever I'm counseling folks on how to make changes and make shifts, the best shifts come from honesty. So if I'm saying, you know what, I want to start walking more, right? I don't just get up in the morning and start walking more. I'm probably going to make an announcement to my family that, hey, by the way, dogs are on you. I'm going to go out and walk, in the morning without the dog. So heads up, here's what's going to happen. It's the same thing with another change. So if you say to your kids, to your husband, I'm finding that I'm doing this phone thing that I'm criticizing you guys for, and I've heard you say this to me, so I'm making a deliberate effort now to put this down. Or I'm noticing that when I answer a question, I'm saying it to shut you up or to move you on to the next thing that we need to do, which is, I'm fine, good. Yep, let's get dinner together, right? And instead, I'm going to start actually answering your question, because I hope that you're asking because you actually care to know the answer, not just because it's polite to have said so, right? Yeah. So announce the change before you start making it, and I think you get more feedback that way.
That's awesome. No, I've heard some cases, my daughter too, in some cases, there's things that you can get them to talk about so liberally. Right. I can get her to tell me about every teacher, what they wore that was wrong, if they had a snot in their nose, whatever. She'll tell me everything, right?
Right.
But then all of a sudden there are those topics that she just doesn't enjoy sharing. And I've heard this from other parents. What do you do when you stumble across that topic that they just can't necessarily, you sense they don't feel good opening up about? Because those are the ones that you worry about, right?
Your daughter will talk to you about any teacher, maybe there's a subject, something that's kind of blasé. They'll talk to you about that all day. They'll talk to you about something they saw on, Twitter or Instagram or some, leading headline. But they won't talk to you about, for you, the things that matter. Like, how are they doing in their personal relationships? How are they doing with people at school? How are they feeling, whether it's, they're kind of being sexual, being, intimidated, being any of the variety of things that are translating through as they go through adolescence. And you want to know, like, how are you doing with that? It's a real deeper question. And what about Sally? And what about Bobby? And what about this? And they're like, fine. So one of the things that I was saying was, I think what's important is to make people aware of when you're noticing a difference. So if you have a kid who's talking to you about Mr. Jones at school and, how he was wearing bright pink shorts and a bright pink shirt and wasn't that funny, you can say, I noticed you tell me a lot of details about certain things. Like, I hear you talking to me about your teachers. I hear you talking to me about homework. But then there are things that I ask you about that you kind of like, you clam up, like I'm a person you're not supposed to give an answer to, right? You're going to somehow implicate yourself in something. Mm-hmm. So what is it? Is it about the way I'm asking? Or is it about the fact that you don't want to give that information, or you're not sure how to answer me? I just want to get a sense of, is there something I'm doing? You can kind of dig a little bit. Like, maybe there's something me as a parent can be doing. Maybe it's something in your body language. You're like, hey, how's Bobby doing? Well, then they're not going to answer you, right?
Right.
But maybe it's about, you're just like, oh, so how's Bobby? Kind of just in the midst of things. Maybe it's when you're asking. Maybe you're sitting at the kitchen table and you're asking then, and it's very intimate because you're face to face. Maybe you notice that you start asking questions when you're driving home from school when they don't have to look at you, right? You might notice some differences of the scene and the placement of those questions. So I think that's a part of it. I also think that it's important to let them know what your motivation is for asking the question, right? This isn't to get you in trouble. This is, as your mom, as your dad, I just want to know that I'm staying right along with you as you're going through whatever you're going through, so that you don't have to turn to me. If you've got somebody else to turn to, if you've got a teacher that you're talking to about these things or another trusted adult, I'm cool with that. I just want to make sure that you have someone you can talk to about some of the things that might be going on, and that we have like a code word of, if things start getting problematic, you can tell me I'm in trouble, right? If we can have that deal, like pinky promise right here, that if you start getting into trouble, if things start getting bad for you, you're going to tell me that, You don't have to tell me all the various details about every conversation you had with Betty, Sally, and Bobby. I'm good, right? Now that's my approach. Not every parent. Some parents want more.
No, I think that's great and so helpful. So what happens when you find that topic and you're concerned? You can't dig to the bottom of it. What should a parent do then, Bridget?
So depending on the topic. So let's say it's a problem with a friendship circle, right? Let's say you have a resource. You got to first figure out what are your resources. So are you close with one of the other moms or dads? Would they be able to give you some insight, right? Maybe if you don't feel like you are or you're not, then you invite those friends. Next time they come over, you kind of linger a little bit more. You observe a little bit more. Maybe you come to practice a little bit earlier, right? Just kind of using, what are your resources? Is it observation? Is it information from others? That sort of thing, to kind of give you some insight so you can ask some educated questions to your teen about that, right? And I think the other thing is too, what I find is I'll be watching, we were watching something yesterday, and then my daughter, her voice cracked and her sister started laughing at her and she got sensitive. And I said, oh, wait, you have to see this, right? And I flipped up the Brady Bunch, when it's time to change. You remember this, right?
Right.
I mean, our contemporaries, we get it, right? Doing the Peter Brady when he was going through adolescence.
Right.
They incorporated his voice change into their little Brady Bunch, montage. So they were cracking up, right? So it opened up something for them to start talking then about the awkwardness of becoming a teenager and having these changes happen right out in front of everybody, right?
Right.
And I think, I know for some kids, like, they don't want to talk about certain body shifts that are happening, other things that are going on with them. And I think sometimes if you just kind of state some facts and then move on, and state some facts and then move on, they'll then know that sitting down and talking with you isn't going to be some crazy awkward interrogation. You're just going to, kind of like they told us, I don't know if you got the same advice, but when my kids were young, I asked, okay, so when do you have the birds and the bees talk? Like, how does that happen? When do you do that? And I remember the doctor telling me, you answer what is asked. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh, that makes sense. So they'll ask a question and I'll answer to the best of my ability the question, versus sitting down at the dining room table as we all were freaked out by, okay, Betty, let's tell you about all the things you never wanted to talk to your parents about, right? And all at once you're flooded with information. So I think it's about kind of letting them sometimes pick up the cues and using forums that can talk about the issues and get the conversation started. And so many kids are now on so many forms of social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever, doing a little poking around and trying to find something that's funny and light that will open up the conversation for them to share little tidbits to kind of take away some of that intensity that happens when we have those deeper conversations.
That's great advice. So if you had to give a parent advice about what kind of questions they should ask, like what should they know about? Because I think sometimes parents are afraid to ask too, or they don't know. I've had a few parents say that to me.
Yeah, like what is important to know? So I think there are some regular things of, how are you doing in school? A lot of parents, oh my God, helicopter parents checking their kids' grades on the hourly basis. If you're one of those parents. So I think part of it is, knowing that your kid is getting the education they need, getting the information that they need, doing the things that they need to do to be a responsible citizen. So I think there's some of that questioning. Some of it can be done face-to-face. Some of it, obviously, you can stalk your children. And again, if you're doing that, you have to talk. But I think that's part of it. I think that's one question. Second is, how responsibly are they using social media? And you and I were having this chat offline about the fact that, listen, until you're 18, you're not granted the right of privacy. Too bad. Too bad for you. So I'm not going to, look at it every night, every text, everything. But I'm going to stand next to you. I'm going to observe. I'm going to grab your phone when I go to charge it at night, whatever it is, to kind of just get a sense of where you're at with the things that you're looking at, the stuff that you're talking about, the things that you're bumping up against. So I can get a sense of, how can I guide you? Because our job as parents is to guide them toward adulthood, to guide them into being responsible adults. So using social media effectively and responsibly is a huge piece. And we could talk for a whole half hour just about that, right?
Yeah, I totally think, that and helicopter parenting. I think those are two great topics for the future.
Huge.
Because we see that helicopter parent manifest itself in a whole bunch of different ways in the
Right.
workforce and college and all these other places.
Oh, and let me say one word about that, because it's a mantra that I have that actually when I was doing my book talk for Feed the Need Teen Edition, I had a mom actually say, well, I'm not buying your book. And I said, but your daughter might, so good for her. And the reason she said it, I'll give you the punchline, is she said, we're talking about control. And I said, parents, cover your ears, but I have to tell your children something. And these are all teens in the audience. And I said, do you get that your parents have never been, are not now, and never will be in control of you? And this mom it blew her mind, and it frustrated her beyond belief, because that was not something she was willing to accept. But the truth of the matter is that if we can get to the point and talking about how do we converse with our children, how do we get information from them, if we can start with the premise that we are not, never have been since infancy, in control of our children, we have been able to influence them to greater and lesser extents. But we have never been, and we never will be, in control of them. So if we can use our influence to guide them, that's well spent energy. If we're trying to expend our energy trying to control them, you're going to need a nap and Xanax, because it's not going to work, right? A tall, stiff whiskey, because it's not going to work. So I want to give parents the ability to be able to know that you can use your energy toward trying to control something that is not controllable, or you can better use it by trying to influence your children. And influencing comes from, one, the respect of that control difference, and two, your own control over your own behavior and actions, like talking about putting our own phones down if we want our kids to put their phones down, that sort of thing.
Hey, last thing, in honor of Suicide Prevention Week, I think this is a really important week, and you just wrote an article this past month about bullying, and it's just so powerful. But as a parent, that this is what we want to know. These parents that unfortunately are caught off guard by teen suicide, it's because they don't know, and the communication isn't there, right? And what words of advice do you have for parents to make sure that they just have the tools to be able to handle some of these more difficult situations our kids are going to face?
Right. I think some of it is knowing your own kid, right? When you notice, like if we're talking suicide, obviously it's different than bullying, because bullying does often lead to suicide, but often there are other precursors to that, scenario, right? So I think part of it is noticing your own kid. Are you noticing changes in behavior? Are you noticing changes in appetite? Are you noticing that they're more sheepish about going to school, or sheepish about what they're supposed to be wearing, or they're making offhanded comments about so-and-so not liking them? Listen for those cues. Kind of pay attention to, wow, Johnny isn't the way Johnny usually is. I need to look at this a little bit more. Did they used to get together with their friends and now they don't anymore? Or, what's kind of happening in that respect? And I think that's, again, that open line of communication of talking to your kid and saying, so we need to have a pact, again, pinky promise right here, that if you're getting into trouble or there are things that are happening, that you're going to talk to me about it. And the other piece about it, which comes back, brings our conversation full circle, is if you want your kids to speak and to be open in a certain way with you, you have to do the same with them. So if you've ever been bullied, and let me tell you, you and I know this, especially as women, that the only difference in the bully landscape between high school and today in my 40s is that I have a car payment and a mortgage. That is the only difference, okay? Yep. Because there are just as many bullies out there in our realm as there were in high school, right? Our resources are different, our attitudes may be different, our coping skills and strategies may be different, and we can get in the car and drive away sometimes, but those are the only differences. So if we can sometimes share our own experience about how we felt when we were being bullied or we were being pushed around, we can give them a model of behavior to be able to put that together for themselves. And the one thing I want to leave you with, because I think it's such an important statement to hold on to for all of us, is that, and I use this in my book, I use this in my presentations, hurt people hurt people. And we often confuse bullying behavior with strength. Bullying behavior with someone who intimidates us. And if we can start with the premise that if a person is bullying us, they are actually weak and trying to overcompensate for that weakness, we can instead face their behavior with compassion instead of fear. And be able to see through it for what it is. And I think that is really helpful in trying to, instead of seeing a towering giant over us, saying the things that they're saying and doing the things that they're doing, we can see Rumpelstiltskin stomping his fists and pounding his feet on the ground and feeling completely diminished, because that's what a bully is. So starting with that compassion and that identification is not to excuse the bully behavior, but to recognize that no one would behave the way that a bully behaves unless they were in a great deal of pain themselves.
Great advice. Bridget, I can't even thank you enough. This was so value added, and just, you're brilliant. I love having you on board. So thank you for joining us, and just, thank you for joining Generating Winners. And how can everybody get a hold of you, Bridget, if they wanted to?
So through the website Generating Winners, and also directly through my website of drbridgetcooper.com, or they can reach me by email at bridget@piecesandplace.com for now.
Great. Thanks, Bridget.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.